Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm Dan Bates. I'm President and CEO of the Greater Hamilton Chamber of Commerce, and we are happy that you joined us here on Coffee and Conversation. Some of you are with us on Zoom and will be able to directly participate. Those of you who are with us on Facebook Live will have to participate if you want to type in a message or something, but we are thrilled to have you, whichever platform you're joining us on. We have a great presentation today that I know myself I've been looking forward to. So we'll hear from Jane in a little bit. But with that being said, you know who I am, so let's find out who all of you are. So I can't see all of you today. I'm sorry for a technical glitch. So if you could just start introducing yourselves, maybe raise your hand first and introduce yourself so the two people aren't trying to talk at the same time. So with that, I'm looking at Judith right now. So Judith, why don't you start?
Okay, so my name is Judy. I'm the intern with the Greater Hamilton Chamber of Commerce.
I'm Nancy O'Neill. I'm Director of Events and Leadership Hamilton with the Chamber.
I'll go next. I'm Laura Merrill. I'm IT support and organizational support for the Chamber.
I'm Jane Garfield. I'm with APG Office Furnishings, and we're chamber members, member chambers.
Tammy Walton. I'm the Finance Director at the Chamber of Commerce in Hamilton.
I'm Lisa Sandlin. I'm an entrepreneur and educator. I'm also a designer and a financial advisor.
My name's Cindy Wilson, and I'm owner of the Village Perks Coffee Shop in 7 Mile.
I'm Tiffany Greb. I'm a Director of Membership and Marketing at the Hamilton Chamber.
And I'm Kevin Johnson, and I'm also with APG Office Furnishings. I'm tagging along with Jane today.
And I'm Ann Arnett, and I'm with Gateway Springs Health Campus. We are a new senior living community coming to Hamilton.
We just got one more popping on here real quick.
Okay, we'll wait a second. Who just joined?
It looks like they popped off, so we can.
All right, well, we'll just go on then.
Okay, wrong Zoom, I guess. So let's continue. And Jane, we're going to turn it over to you. Just kind of frame a little bit what you're going to be talking about, because some of us know, some of us may not.
Kevin and I are going to be doing this presentation together. Kevin's going to be running some of the technical stuff, and then we're both going to talk with you, and it's going to be a return to workplace considerations for you in the COVID-19 era that we're experiencing right now. So Dan, do you want us just to jump right into it?
Just jump right into it.
We're very interested also in, what you're doing or what you've heard people are doing. It seems like we have a small group today, so I don't know if we're going to get a lot of outside chamber experiences, but if people can type in questions, that would be good too, because we're always interested in learning what people are doing because it's constantly changing. So Kevin, do you want to put the slides up?
Yeah, if someone could give me permission to share screen, is that possible?
So I do want to say, originally Herman Miller was going to be a part of our presentation, and the person who was going to join us got called out of town, and so Kevin is helping in filling out. I go down and click you got it, where it says notes, all the way to the left. There you go.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. I didn't want it to be distracting. So instead, Kevin's helping me out. Kevin works with me. He's our Vice President of Sales, and he's a wonderful person that I work with, and I report to him. So as I said, this is our return to the workplace, and it's the physical part of it, because currently we're still working, but it's not at home. You want to go to the next slide? So we don't really know how long this pandemic is going to last or how it's going to unfold. We know that the New York Times people interviewed 24 experts in public health, medicine, epidemiology, and history, and they all agree that the path ahead is going to be long. And estimates run from several months to a couple years. But the one thing that they do agree on is that the initial wave of physical distancing measures that are going to be happening in the next couple interim periods are going to continue, and it's going to probably happen in waves. And so that what we're doing now is going to continue, and it's going to be in phases, and that the return to the workplace is not likely to be a one-time event. This may spike, and it may happen that we start this physical distancing, and if we don't keep it up, we may have to return to it several times. So the thing that you really need to focus on is making sure that the needs of the people who are going to be using the space, whether they're customers or whether they're your employees, that they're respectful and they're humane, that people don't feel that they're uncomfortable or not natural, because they'll just reject them and not use them. So that is key. And to help you do that, you probably should just consider what jobs are critical and must return to the space and what jobs are not. And by successfully figuring that out, you can remove 50% of your people, or whatever that percentage might be, by having them work remotely, which will make the space more humane for everybody left in it, because you just can't have a high census in the upcoming phase 1 return to the workplace. So I'm going to turn the next slide over to Kevin. He's going to talk about what we know from science.
Great. So if you're like me, you're seeing a lot of different articles and things out there, and suggesting good suggestions, whether that be adding screens to desks and workstations, to putting up partitions, making sure people are separated at least 6 feet, all that stuff. And there's a lot of stuff out there. And what I love about Herman Miller, our partner, is that they're a very research-based company, and so they've taken what they've learned from the WHO, from the CDC, and then they actually have some physicians that are on staff at Herman Miller as well. So they've taken all that research and pretty well distilled it down to, hey, what are some scientifically proven methods of making sure that our workplaces are safe moving forward? And so we're just going to talk about a couple of those here. The first few are personal interventions. So these are things that we can do each personally to make sure that we mitigate the spread of disease and bacteria. And these are all relatively simple, known things. However, a lot of times we find that there's just things that we need a little bit more training or retraining on. So washing our hands thoroughly. Before all this, I was a relatively diligent hand washer. But when you actually sit and do the 20-second hand washing, that's a long time, and making sure that you're completely washing your hands. Covering your cough and sneezes. Obviously, ideally, if you had a tissue that you could cough or sneeze into, that's great. But if not, at least coughing into your elbow. Staying home when you're sick. Now, I'm before all this was one of the probably worst infringers of this rule. I would never want to stay home when I'm sick. I don't want to interfere with my work. I don't want to take PTO when I'd rather take that time for vacation. But it really is important that now more than ever, that if we're sick or exhibiting symptoms, that we stay home. Not just to keep other people safe, but to also make sure that we can get healthy and on the mend quicker. And then another suggestion is to wear masks, face coverings. Some environmental interventions. So the environment of the workspace that have been known to help to put in place regular clean and sanitizing procedures. Have sanitizing methods readily available, whether that be wipes or spray that people can use and wipe down their own workspaces, their phones, their keyboards and mouses. Making sure that shared spaces are getting cleaned regularly. using antimicrobials, whether that be with cleaning and also with materials that we're putting in the workspaces. And then also the third one here is something that some people don't necessarily talk about, but I think is very important, is making sure that we have proper ventilation in our spaces. So is our HVAC system recycling air constantly, or is it pulling new air in from the outside? That's really important to be able to know and to kind of control. And then community interventions. So what are we doing as a community in the workspace to make sure we're safe, following those physical distancing of 6 feet recommendations, reconfiguring things as needed. And further along in the presentation, Jane's going to kind of touch base on what we as APG are doing in our own office space to follow some of these things. So a lot of these things are, known things, but there's going to have to be a lot of behavioral changes within the workspace. And, I don't remember the exact number, but it's far easier to break a good habit than it is to form a good habit. So a quick example, before this pandemic and things were shut down, I was very diligent and very disciplined about going to the gym every morning before work. Now gym shut down, I quickly get out of that routine, and now I'm starting to try to get back into that routine from a home perspective. And that's been really hard. So it's really hard to develop these good behaviors. And it takes intentionality for us as employers to intentionally school our folks up and have a culture of such that can encourage workers and our workers to practice safe behaviors. Do we encourage folks to, hey, if you're sick, stay home? We don't guilt them into coming in, right? Are we making sure that people, when they are not feeling safe, that we have an environment where they can bring their concerns to us and make sure that we address those concerns? What processes are in place now, and what new behaviors do we need to start teaching our employees? It's not okay for us to assume that our employees know the proper procedures to make sure that we maintain a safe work environment. And so how are those guidelines being established, and how are they shared with our employees? At APG, we have an all-employee meeting every Friday. We use Microsoft Teams a lot to make sure that people know, what are the recent updates from a government perspective? What's DeWine saying regarding Ohio and how things are reopening? What are things that we're seeing in our own workspaces that we need to change or that are going well? What are some things that aren't going so well? So making sure that we're answering questions and encouraging connection between our workforce. And then what changes are we making in an environment? And as I've discussed a little bit, Jane's going to walk into specifics of that, but are there places nearby that people can get up and wash their hands? If not, do they have access to hand sanitizer, etc.? And so a few different considerations, practical applications for returning to the office. Again, our partner Herman Miller has the advantage of being a global company. So this is a couple of things that they're doing specifically in their office in Hong Kong. They're keeping diligent records of anyone that's been affected by the virus. They're reducing their density in their office. They're having a sign-up schedule so they know the rotation of people in and out of the office, and they're making sure that they're staggering their start times so there's not a bottleneck as they enter the office to take their temperatures. They're taking everyone's temperatures. People are wearing masks. They're cleaning and disinfecting the whole facility twice a day. So they are taking, this is just one example of what Herman Miller has been doing to maintain safety. So here are a couple immediate actions that could be easy things to implement to begin with. Again, making sure that we're increasing the education of hygiene, good hygiene, practicing those practices, as well as cleaning. Implementing flexible work hours, and I'm not saying that we need to say, hey, you guys can come and go whenever you want to. That's not really what that means. It's more, hey, if someone can work from home, let's do that. Or if we can stagger start times and stagger leave times, and making sure that we're controlling the flow of our of our people to make sure that we're reducing the density in certain areas. Let's do that. Let's reduce density. Let's spread people out if that's a possibility. Reducing in-person interaction. So maybe that means, your conference room that seats 10 people, maybe we don't have 10 people in that conference room. Maybe we move some of those meetings to virtual meetings as we're so used to doing now. Making sure that we're limiting or stopping desk sharing. In our space here in Cincinnati, we have some work points that are dedicated for, every time someone comes in, they go to the same space. But then we also, before this, had spaces that people could share, or, our salespeople didn't have dedicated spots, so they would just pop in and claim an unclaimed spot. Well, now we've done away with the unassigned spaces and have assigned people to make sure that they're going to the same space and using the same equipment every time, and that allows us to regulate the cleaning a lot more and increase it. And another thing is to increase, again, as I mentioned before, increase the ventilations and circulating outside air if possible. And we've been in touch, and I'm sure there's members of the Hamilton Chamber too that do HVAC stuff, but we also have several contacts in this area if you need someone to reach out to, if that's something that's concerning to you. So as this whole thing has happened, has kind of progressed, we've seen the movement of working from home more often. There's been some businesses that have been hesitant to allow their employees to work from home, but have been forced to through this time, and have found that it has gone well, or maybe there have been some bumps in the road for that, but we need to make sure that we're continuing to communicate with those folks that are working from home and making sure that they're engaged in the company and engaged in culture. And one thing that we've kind of changed we basically changed the wording from social distancing to physical distancing, because it is important that we're maintaining social interaction, to make sure that we're just maintaining connection as folks are working from home. And so with that, I'm going to pass it back over to Jane to start talking about some design considerations when we're moving forward.
Thanks, Kevin. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the workplace, and Kevin just mentioned this. Why are we using physical distancing versus social distancing? And this was a recommendation from the World Health Organization. They advocated for this change in the term because we are social people. We're social animals, and we aren't distancing ourselves socially. Look what we're doing here today. We're socially engaged. I keep picking up these words. We're engaging socially, but we're still remaining distant. So they say it's better to use the word distancing, physical distancing, instead of social distancing. Something else I caught Kevin, instead of calling it a mask, also a face covering is a more gentle term that you can use, that it takes a situation that none of us are happy about and makes it more palatable. So the next slide. Okay. So this is what physical distancing looks like. If you extend your arms, the average human being, not me, because I'm very short, but and not Kevin, because he's really tall, so he's actually more than 6 feet. If you were to extend your arms out from your top of your center finger on both sides is approximately 6 feet. It's like 8 feet for Kevin when he does it, and it's like 5 feet for me when I do it. But that gives you an idea, and you can see in this slide what that looks like in a chair. So you just need to be very cognizant of it and just understand what a 6 foot or a 2 meter space looks like. So these are various scenarios that you can, if you had a traditional corporate office, that you would use. So if you look at these examples, in a benching example, which it seems like if you don't know the term benching, what that is basically almost like an open table that people come in and out of, and the census in it can gain and subtract quite easily just by adding a chair, because there's not a lot of storage in it. And it's a very modern way that the younger generation likes to work. It's very engaging. And unfortunately, it is the kind of space that is going to have to be eliminated for the time being in this current situation that we're experiencing, because people are too close and they can't get that 6 foot distance. Unless, if you see in the example, you go from 8 people to 4 people. And if you notice, they're staggered in this example. And another way of, you see in the scenario off to the right, the alternating outbound orientation. If you look carefully at the way the chair is facing, everybody is facing in the same direction, so that anything that might be coming out of their mouth would be all going in the same direction, not facing each other. They eliminated the face-to-face. So you can increase your census by changing the orientation to everybody forward facing. That's the third example. And the circle that you see around that chair is the 6 foot circle. And that's what we do for a lot of our customers, is we'll just take their floor plates and just pop a 6 foot circle so that they can understand where their problems are and how they can be solved. So if you look at ancillary spaces, spaces that used to have 4 chairs for a small conference space now really can only have 1, and vice versa. The one that it just becomes more of a touchdown space for a single person rather than a meeting space. So like Kevin said, I think even within your office, you may still want to keep going with a team meeting so that you can gather as a group. You're in the same space. That's how we still do it. But you are not face-to-face, and you're not violating the 6 foot rule. So we can go to the next slide. So these are more of the conference spaces. So what you can do is, this is an example how 10 seats goes down to 4 and 6 seats go down to 3. You just have to look at it very carefully and evaluate what is safe. Kevin and I had a meeting last week in our conference space. It's a table that sits 12, and there was the 2 of us in there. I felt like we were the Vanderbilts at dinner. It was a different kind of a meeting, but it was a safe place for us. We still wore masks, and when we were done, we cleaned our spaces so that we left it clean for the next person to come. And that was a protocol that we have in place at APG. And just like you see on the slide, you have to have a cleaning schedule and you have to have a protocol in place. And that was something that we knew that we had to do after our meeting finished. And those are the things that would need to be established, whether it is a customer facing a situation in a coffee shop or whether it would be an office space. You have to have a protocol in place on how the space is treated so that everybody feels safe. That is the biggest thing that you need to do, is give that sense of space, that sense of safe feeling. So another thing that we are seeing doing, and we are doing ourselves, is that you can reallocate spaces that were originally meeting rooms convert them to work points for people, so that a large conference room that had 4 people now can sit 2 people. And same thing, the one on the far right where it had a seating for 8 now can have 4 workspaces in it safely. So this is another way that you can add space back into an existing location without tearing down walls and changing the dynamic of the space. Our feeling is that this is temporary, but it may be for a long haul. It could be for several years, maybe only for a few months. Nobody really knows. I think once a vaccine comes into place, everything can go back to the way it was, but not really. If you think about after 9/11, all the changes that were made in the airline industry, and after the bombing at the federal building, now all federal buildings, everything's different. You have all those barriers in front. So anytime a big thing in history happens, changes are made, and it seems like we never go back. So if just thinking about pre-9/11 air flight and airports, all the things that have happened since, the feeling is that once we have a handle on this and it's into control, things are going to change exponentially. The way people are set up, like I said, benching may be altered a bit, and just the work from home situation may be altered as well, because of the experiment was run, the genie is out of the bottle, and it was discovered that people are actually productive and can function and do well at home. And there's certain segments of our population, such as people on the spectrum, you know, introverts, people who have anxiety, who are immune compromised, any of those segments of the population, working from home is actually a better alternative for them. And now it's been proven, hopefully, if it was successful, that they can work from home and this should be embraced and maybe implemented into the future of the workplace. So next slide. So this is our floor plate. And this is our floor plate after we've gone down and done a deep dive on how we're going to work. So we enter, you see the stairwell, or actually, Kevin, you can use your little pointer there. That's where we enter, and you can see that is the first space that we have is phase 1A. That is where we are going to screen. We'll have a temporary screen there for the persons, and that's where the temperature would be taken. And before I go into A, B, C, and D, I'm going to show you the colors. So Kevin had mentioned earlier that we had some unassigned spaces and we had assigned spaces. And now everybody has an assigned space, and that's going to control the cleaning and it's going to control the use of the equipment. I didn't have an assigned space, but now I do. And when I come in, that's where I will sit, and I will feel safe that no one else has sat there. I will know that I was the last person there and I cleaned it before I left. Probably will clean it before I start as well. And it's all color coded, and it's divided into two teams, Team A and Team B, and they're color coded. So Team A is the bright blue and Team B is the purple. So if you were to just look where the purple dots are and the bright blue dots, you can see that we're very spaced out for a huge floor plate. We have some flex spaces. We have a lot of people that are in and out of our office from other offices that are, like our marketing director. We just have one marketing director and we have 5 offices, so she travels around. And therefore, she can go into any of these yellow spaces. Those are, at any time, that's where she's allowed to sit. And if you look at the bright pink spaces, these are also flex spaces, but they are regulated to only when there isn't somebody sitting adjacent. So if you go up to the upper corner where I sit, Kevin, and I'm that purple dot there, if I'm there, the space next to me can't be sat in. So it's regulated, it's a map, it's there, and it's rules and protocol for us. Then we have, if you look at the letters A, B, C, and D, A is where there's a screen, and that's where the temperature is taken. The temperature screening is there. B is cleaning station. So what that means is that there's going to be Purell and other supplies ready for you to pick up and use anytime you need to clean a space. If you were in a conference room and you use it, you know that you're to clean it afterwards. C is our hand washing stations, and that's with hot water and soap. And it's just known that these are where the things are, and everybody knows. And if you look at the little tiny orange dots on the conference spaces, you will see that in our break room, for instance, it has 8 chairs, but really only 2 are allowed, because anything that has an orange dot on it is off limits. So that big conference room that Kevin and I sat in last week, even though it holds 12, we're only allowing 4 people in it. And conversely, across the big guitar pick space, normally that holds 9 people, we're only allowing 3. And these are just, it's all throughout the space. It's posted, everybody has this, and we all know, and it's accepted. And it makes the space humane because it's still our space. It hasn't changed too much, there's just new rules. So just, anybody have any questions on this before I move on? All right, next slide.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Your elevators, do you allow 2 people in them, 1 people in them, and do you have signage?
Kevin, do you want to address that? Because I know you talked to the building owner.
Sorry, yeah, I just need to unmute myself. So yeah, our building owner has done a great job. They make sure that they clean with some high grade cleaner multiple times a day within our elevator. So we at this point in our particular office, we only have like 2 or 3 people coming in every day, and we just stagger our arrival times. We do say only 1 person in the elevator at a time. And at this point, there is not signage, but there is outside of every elevator on every floor a sanitizing station. So you can, make sure to clean your hands after if you have to touch the elevator button.
The one thing that I forgot to mention was that also every employee in our space has been issued several face coverings and a special bottle of hand sanitizer so that we have the proper tools. We have disposable face coverings for guests who walk in, and all temperatures will be taken, and they know the protocol prior to entering our space. But it's just going to be our new normal in our space, and everybody understands it. And it's your responsibility to make sure your masks are cleaned. And you have several from which to select. So I'm going to go to the next slide. So boundaries. This is a big thing that we're talking to a lot of people about right now. Again, we have to emphasize that there's many surfaces in the building and that are not antimicrobial, like doorknobs and kitchen refrigerator doors, anything like that. The biggest thing that you can do and is just extra cleaning regimens. So increasing that and making sure you use a mask, making sure that once testing and contact tracing is in place, that we use that. Those are the biggest things that are going to mitigate the virus. But boundaries have proven to make people feel safer and psychologically more comfortable. So we do offer them. And you just have to know that the virus can still live on surfaces for days at a time and choose appropriately. So there are boundaries that can be hard surfaces that can be wiped down, or actually fabric surfaces are porous, and they don't last as long on fabric as they do on plastic. Plastic, it's up to 3 days. Stainless steel plastic is up to 3 days, and porous fabrics, it's only 24 hours. But you can see the different levels here. So there's a circulation area that allows airflow, which is also very good. And then they go up, we have seated height and standing height. And it is something that certainly will help in terms of mitigating spray from your mouth when you're speaking or singing or shouting. But it has not been scientifically proven, but it does give people psychological comfort that will make them feel safe in their workplace. So the next slide. One thing that does need to be looked at is the circulation. So you'll see that this is a floor plate, and where there are little black dots, those are what they call nodes, where it's likely that people will bump into each other. Those used to be spectacular places that we used to try to encourage within a floor plate, because that was where serendipitous conversations would take place and more work got done. And what's happening now is that is where people are congregating, because it's a natural place where you bump into. So you need to make sure that you understand where those occur and provide enough traffic flow so that you don't have big bunches up. And so, like Kevin mentioned, staggering entries, staggering breaks, maybe even have directional circulation. There's stickers you can put down on the floor. There are different colored carpets that you can inlay within your carpet to give direction. If you have hundreds of people in your workplace, that would be probably a smart thing to do. Whatever you want to do, the intent is to decrease close contact. So Herman Miller had a customer early in this process. I want to say this might have even occurred way back at the very beginning, February, March timeframe. And this is a floor plate that they did, just a quick example of showing how what they've done is, again, they have the 6-foot bubbles, and after COVID, they went from 74 to 60 spaces. But what they also did is they increased the amount, they took the conference rooms and they turned them into these work points so that it increased that census so that more people could work there, but now they can't congregate in workspaces in a conference room. And they added those phone booths. We sell those kind of encapsulated phone booths, and ours actually have been proven that they circulate the air so that they are a safe place, but if you use it, you're gonna have to clean it afterwards. And I wanna go on to the next slide. So the biggest thing you wanna do is just make sure, as Kevin mentioned earlier, that you have these conversations and that you're upfront and honest and very transparent to your workforce. Make sure that you have health and safety practices in your workplaces and that you communicate them well, and that you're using established distancing, and that you have everybody understands, and how are you just making these decisions, and in terms of recalibrating your space. In our office, what we've done is probably going to do it in phases, so that the people who need access, we sell furniture, and so people need to see it. So people who need access to the showroom are the first people that are allowed into the space. And it's a strategic way, but the person who is doing quotes doesn't necessarily need to be in the space. So as long as you're strategic and you communicate it and you phase it in correctly, I think that you could be very successful. One thing you might want to consider are your materials in the future. So that's the next slide. And there has been a lot of discussions about new materials considerations. What we've discovered is that I think the workplace is going to become more hospital-like in terms of its evaluation. So starting with airflow, you know that they have really controlled the airflow from room to room in a hospital. They aren't allowing germs to flow from one ICU room to another. They have the airflow balanced. And I think that if you have a lot of enclosed spaces, it would be prudent for you to go ahead and engage the HVAC person to come in and evaluate how much outside airflow. I've been reading a lot about windows that open again with natural air coming in might be a thing of the future, where we've gotten away from that. So they're going to also apply the kind of things that we use in hospital now, antimicrobial, things that don't promote bacteria, things with barriers, so they can be wiped down and the water won't make them moldy, vinyls, things that you can bleach clean, like a Krypton is a special material that you can use, that you can clean it with a bleach solution. All of these things, as workspaces are ordering new things, may be what will be in our new workplace. We're also seeing manufacturers that are using more copper, because copper does not promote the growth of bacteria. So that I think that copper mesh seating, because when you have a mesh seat, you can't get the bacteria out of it. There's too many crevices. But if it's made out of a copper material, it doesn't even have the bacteria start to grow. I wouldn't be surprised if copper plumbing becomes back into fashion. It's a lot more expensive, but it's going to help keep bacteria down. So there's just a couple slides that I'm just mentioning it, that these are just things that you need to think about your workplace. Do you need to retrofit your workplace with these? Not necessarily, but if you do anything in the future, I think that this should be a consideration. You have to think about how are you cleaning and what you're doing and what protocols you're going to have and how those materials are going to wear. And the last thing we have is we have lots of resources should you need them. Like Kevin mentioned, if you had a need for HVAC, we have resources we can, it's not what we do, but we have partners that we can recommend that can help you. Just things that you might want to take in place. We have a whole electronic binder full of things that you may not have even thought about, like hand washing stations, things that you can use for spacing. There's the footprints you can put on all kinds of barriers, things that you can put around a reception desk to keep things. We have resources if you need it. It's, you know, everybody has resources, but if you need some help, we can help you. I just wanted to make sure that you understood making it human is probably key, and making your people comfortable, that they feel safe in your space. And at that, we're done, and we thank you for your time. And if you have questions, we'd love to answer them for you.
Jane, it's Dan. I'll start it off. Luckily, I was able to put your presentation on the big screen in the conference room. So while you were talking, I was moving our chairs and stuff around. So I have a couple questions. One thing would be, you're very familiar with our space, obviously. So since I'm glad we installed the glass doors. So I think I would recommend that everyone in their office keep their glass door closed when they're in there, and anybody who wants to come in should have a face mask, or really just stand at the door and talk to the person at the desk. You know, that'd be an automatic 6 feet or more. So do we need to put anything on the floor for guests to let them know that they shouldn't go beyond that point? And do you think that keeping the glass doors closed are a good idea?
I think keeping the glass doors closed is an excellent idea. That keeps that safe, that the space safe. And then I know what you're saying, like at Costco, they have queues for people, stand here.
Yeah.
I think,
I don't really want to do that, so I'm waiting for your answer.
yeah, I don't know if it's necessary. If you make it, when somebody comes into your space, if you maybe you post a note on the door that says, please don't enter unless you have a face mask, and remain and respect social distancing.
Okay, the
And
face
then,
mask I already have on the door, but I could add a social distancing sign.
yeah, I think signage, and I truly believe, just like Kevin says, this is going to be a habit for people. I had a meeting yesterday, and it was weird just to have a meeting, and we were so far apart while we were talking with our masks on, but it was what we had to do. I think putting a yellow line on there, do you think people would even notice it? And I don't know if they would even know that that means stop here. I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
And if you wanted, there are ones that are temporary. They're like decals that you can put on the carpet. So maybe at the beginning, that's what you do.
Okay.
And I think it's important too to remember that it's not going to be the same for every organization or every person. So, you know, me personally, I'm not a person that's necessarily fearful or worrisome by nature, but there are people that are really scared and really are worried. And so I, as a person, need to be respectful of that other person and making sure that, hey, I'm gonna, you know, I'm currently in my office, my door's shut, so I don't have a face covering, but if I were to go outside of my space, I'm gonna put a face covering on. And if we were to welcome people in, I would have a face covering and have those available for them to use as well. And just to kind of set the expectation of, hey, this, and also I think it helps to really kind of acknowledge how kind of awkward and weird it is, because it's not really, you know, we're social creatures, right? We're supposed to interact with people, but we also need to be responsible. So I think if we call that out and set the expectation at the beginning, that goes a long way.
Another thing on the elevator question that I have read is that protocol is, if you're in a large enough elevator that it would allow 6 foot distance between you, you're supposed to turn where you're supposed to have a face mask. You're supposed to turn towards the wall, not face out. And it's the most, it's kind of one of those very awkward things that you used to do and experiment with people to see how they would react if you were to do something like that. And now it's supposed to be protocol. So that is the standard procedures. When you enter an elevator, you're supposed to face the wall and not out. Anybody else have anything? I'd be interested in hearing what you guys are implementing, and like in the coffee shop, what are some of the things that you're planning on doing? Had you given it any thought? We like to learn from everybody, and we can share that kind of information with others once we know it.
Well, this was good. I'm really glad that I hopped on today, because we are getting ready to open the coffee shop back up to have seating, and that's what people and my clients have really been wanting. It's like they keep asking, when are you bringing the tables and chairs back out? So this was really good to give me an idea. I don't have a big space, but in normal circumstances prior to all of this, I had a table that sat at least 8 people, and then another one that was 2. I actually set about 15 people inside the coffee shop without any distancing or thing. And that's if everybody, and that's on a Saturday that they really come in and sit and hang out for a while. So since we're getting ready to this weekend set this space back up, this was really good for me to see and to listen exactly how am I going to do this. I'm going to do smaller tables, smaller seating, not as many, and we'll take it from there and still maintain the 6-foot distancing rule. Right now I have it a note on the door that I only allow 3 customers in at a time, and the floor is taped off as every 6 feet, so that people can still maneuver around and not be in each other's space. So
I think that's great. I think people, especially in a retail situation, appreciate visual cues. I know that I do, and I respect them, and I think that that's a great idea. Do you have any access to outside areas? Because that's another way of increasing your senses.
Right. Well, we've been talking about that. Right now I have a bench sitting out front, and I'm really right on the highway, basically. I don't have a lot of outdoor area, but we're talking about maybe taking up the bench and putting in a couple of bistro tables out there just to have another option. But anyway, we have learned to definitely adapt and overcome every situation that's been bombarding us through this, because I am a newer business. I only opened up 2 years ago. So this, we've worked through this. I've increased my clients, I've increased customer base, and people are, so they have been very, very supportive of the fact that I did not shut down. I did not let this overtake me. So, because I'm in the village of 7 Mile, and there's nothing here. There's nothing here. Churches and a post office and a little market, and us, and that's it. So people drive by right on 127, so it's the main thoroughfare, and I get a lot of different people from a lot of different areas, and so but we'll make it work. I mean, we'll just do what we can do, and we'll make it work. So, and for the most part, I've got probably about 99% of my customers that actually come through are not wearing face coverings, and that's fine. If you have one on, you have one on. I respect that. I'm not a judger, so we'll just, if that makes them feel comfortable, then that's good. And they see us, we wipe pins, we wipe the register down, we wipe the counter, even while after they've completed their transaction, they see what we do, and that was very important. And I've told my baristas, let the customers see you wash your hands before you go and make their drink. Let them see you clean and sanitize and do all of that, because I mean, with health regulations anyway, we have this, we were already stringent with our cleaning, but be conscious of letting the customers see us doing that. That will also help and say, hey, we know that they're doing what they can do. So.
Awesome. That's good.
So do you guys want to hear what we're doing in our office? My office is one big room, so it's 700 square feet. I've got a team of 10 people. So if you calculate that out, we can social distance fairly easily. I have individual tables in there that are like, you can stand at work, or I've got the higher stools so you can sit. We only meet once a week as a team. So I'm giving everyone, we meet on Monday evenings. We're still doing Zoom meetings. We will continue to do Zoom meetings, but if you want to come in, the office is open to work if you feel uncomfortable doing that. I have a man on my team whose wife is going through chemo right now, so he is not comfortable coming in. I have masks. I have people on my team that will not wear masks. They will not buy into it. I don't make it mandatory. If they want to wear a mask, they can. If they don't, then they just need to stay away from everybody and stay safe. I have added the cleaning. We're in the municipal building, so
okay.
They've given us the protocol of what we have to do to enter this space, and then once we cross into our office, it's kind of up to us. But everything that we do, that's the financial side of what I do, my financial business. We have been positioned to do everything online for a long time now. So we meet with clients. If they want to come in, we are having meetings in there. But like I said, we're so large that we can sit very easily 6 feet apart. I've met with people where I'm about 15 feet apart. You kind of feel like you're yelling, but you know, it's a small office, so I'm not dealing with what you guys are at your office. It was interesting yesterday when I was at Tommy's office. We went into the conference room and so physically distanced, but it's really hard to have a conversation with the mask on.
It is.
And especially when you're talking design, it's like, you know, there's expressions and you can't read people's faces, and it makes it very difficult when you're in the communication business to have a mask on and try to deal with people. Just like in the coffee business, it'd be really hard for people to have a mask on and drink coffee. You just can't. It's I don't know. My opinion on this is I think it's going to go away sooner than we think. I think the stats are going to come out and we're going to realize that a lot of this stuff that we're doing as protocol maybe isn't necessary or might even be adding to the problem.
Yeah, I don't.
But time will tell, right? Time will tell.
I think once we have the vaccine.
When I go out, I do all this stuff, you know, out of respect for mankind. I'm not going to implicate anybody else. Yesterday, I had to have a mammogram at the hospital, so that was very interesting going in to the hospital and the protocol, and you know, you get your temperature taken and all that, and it's there was only one gatekeeper though. When I went to my doctor's office a few weeks ago, there were 2 gatekeepers before I could get in to see my doctor. So it's interesting.
I was telling Kevin, I went to a large manufacturing plant yesterday to meet with a customer, and the factory part of the business was up and running, but the office, it's a huge office, you know, hundreds and hundreds of people, and there was like maybe 4 or 5 people there. But I had to go to the guard gate and then go to a place in the factory and have my temperature taken. And what they did is they gave me a wristband to show that anybody who saw me saw that I passed the test and that I was safe. So that was interesting, but they're so large, I could see that would be a visual cue that they give to make their employees feel safe, because there's construction going on in the space right now.
Because there really is a lot of psychology going on with this. It's the feeling of being safe. We don't really know if you're safe.
No, we don't.
We're hoping that you feel safe.
Yeah. eventually we'll know more, but.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Are you finding anything, Jane? Is there any research coming out? I know a lot of the businesses that I've talked to are finding that their productivity is actually up by letting people work from home.
And it's interesting you should say that. I want to say that I have read the same thing. Has Herman Miller done any surveys on that, Kevin? I know that the surveys also that I've read is that 1 in 3 people want to stay working from home, which is pretty high. Kevin, do you know anything about the productivity levels?
Yeah, actually, Herman Miller is in process of conducting surveys right now. And another publication that I subscribe to, ThinkLab, they are finding that kind of what you just said, Jane, that a large percentage prefer to work from home, and are finding that they can get the job done as good from home as in the office. But it varies from business to business, and people have varying opinions on that too.
I know some of the calls that I've been on, especially for larger entities and manufacturers where the office staff is working from home. What I'd heard is interesting is the people who were marginal to begin with in the office got worse, and the people who were good employees got much better. Mm-hmm. So overall, seeing an increase in productivity, but also efficiency, because meetings aren't typically lasting as long. When you have an in-person meeting, everybody expects it to be an hour. A Zoom meeting, unless it's an ongoing conversation like this, a Zoom meeting, a lot of them are 30 minutes and done. So I've heard a lot of people, even if they haven't actually studied it, are saying that they think their productivity and efficiency has increased. I know at the chamber with my team, we've seen certainly not a decrease in productivity. I think we've seen an increase in efficiency. I think the flexibility has certainly helped everybody, because when you're on 100% and you're totally productive, and it's okay to check out for an hour and come back later. So I think that's been good for the psyche of my employees. I mean, they can certainly chime in, but I think we've all done that. Like somebody might work till later hours than they normally would, but then the next day maybe they take a little bit easier, because it's become a lot more project focused. What have I gotten done? What have I accomplished, as opposed to I have to be in the office from 8 to 4. So how we're going to deal with that when everything opens back up, I mean, that's a conversation we have to have. So I've always kind of believed in a flexible schedule, but I guess we also at some point have to figure out how we're going to man the office as well. So it's a conversation I think a lot of people are going to be having, because I don't think 1 in 3, Jane, like you mentioned, that's high. And I think it's a reality. And I think it's not going to go back to business as usual, because, like I said, the good employees, they're even better, and they're making it work.
I'm going to have an offline conversation with Kevin to find out which school I'm in.
I think we already know that.
Yeah.
We already know you're a star, Jane.
The only thing I think lacks is the collaboration part of the job. I mean, there's an accomplishment of your individual tasks, but the collaboration in the beginning, the ability to move on a project that you require infrequent, intermittent input, I think that suffers, at least for me. Sometimes it's just a quick interaction that helps me move forward on something that I do miss.
We use Teams. Have you guys tried that? And we use it for almost everything, with chats, sharing documents, files. We have groups already set up so that we have all our video meetings with Teams. And so we can quickly send a chat. Like if you just need somebody to say, hey, do you want this red or blue? They can see it pop up, see the question answered, even though they may be on another meeting or in the middle of something. And that is how we have mitigated that issue that you're discussing, which is the quick, small answer to move forward.
We use Teams as well, although we found, Teams works great internally. When you're collaborating externally, there can be some challenges, if it's a board member or something like that. But yeah, Teams is a great internal. I know, and none of this completely replaces in person. I think there has to be, some rather scheduled or expected internal. But I know what we've been doing here in the office too, is if we need to have a quick, set up a Teams meeting, and if they didn't see it, you text them and say, hey, get on the Teams meeting, for those quick check-ins.
We've not used the chat feature though in Teams, so that could be something that we could explore.
Yeah. I mean, internally, Teams would be a good tool.
And then you can store files. You can share information. So if you have a project you're working on, you can all store your files on it too. That's what we do.
Plus, you can record the meetings if you need minutes later to refer. So.
Well, food for thought. My brother is, still teaching at the University of Cincinnati design, and they're using Teams. And he says he's never worked so hard in all of his life, but they feel that the level of education has skyrocketed because as a designer, Jane, you know that you have desk crits and the professor goes around and talks to you individually. Well, now that conversation is being heard and seen by all of the students. So the level of education is just going way up because the way that the conversations are, everybody's interacting. They might be on mute, but at least they're hearing and seeing. So every day becomes like a crit. It's where everybody gets to see what's going on. But their classes, a 4-hour studio is now going 8 hours because of that. So it's, my brother is like, I get done and I'm wiped out. I can't even do anything. But they're not getting up, the hard part about working at home is remembering to get up and move and exercise and take that break and get away from the screen for a little while. Because those of you that are designers appreciate this. Those of you that aren't, we get lost in a project. And I mean, I've sat down for 6 hours before and realized, oh my gosh, I haven't moved from this chair in that long. So you got to set reminders and stuff.
All right, anything else? Any other questions?
Yeah, Jane, I have another question. When we were talking about the coffee shop earlier, one of the things that I think is really unique to our area in Hamilton and the surrounding area, which includes, 7 Mile and Trenton and other places, the number of businesses who have remained open is a much higher percentage than the businesses who have closed, which is kind of unique for this small little area. So, with that, when everybody else is talking about reopening, we were just talking about, how we, start bringing in regular customers and, expanding the business and that type of thing. So with that being said, and because you have a much broader perspective, are you seeing that, maybe I live in a bubble and I just think that we're the ones who remained open, but we have very, very few businesses who closed completely during this. They've been doing curbside delivery and a lot of online and takeout and all that kind of stuff. So we are not really reopening. We're just, expanding business. With that being said, do you think it's an easier transition with these guidelines for the businesses who never actually closed than it is the ones who, are starting from scratch and opening up the door and saying, so where do we start? Do you have any perspective on what that looks like?
And are you speaking more retail too, aren't you? Because I would say almost all of our customers remained open, but in a different way.
Okay.
Don't get me wrong. We had a bunch of customers that had tons of furloughs and tons of staff reduction, so it affected them. But you're speaking more to me, I think, in terms of retail.
Well, retail, restaurant, and offices. We have, a lot of the offices here went totally virtual. So, even though they had maybe 2 people in the office and everybody else was virtual. So there were an awful lot of businesses here who stayed in full operation.
That's mostly what we've experienced as well.
Okay.
I think what I have seen from the people I've talked to, and Kevin, please chime in because you're in touch with all the other offices. What I have seen is that even though people are allowed back in, they aren't jumping, and they're really very cautious. And even though, like, people have said, yeah, it's not going to be till July 6th that we even consider going back. And it's because they have to figure it out. They have to have a game plan. They have to make it sure that their people feel safe. Or just like you said, like trying to figure out, how does this work? Just like the coffee shop, how does that work? How do I make it work? So they're delaying the entry, plus the fact that people, I think, still are a little gun shy. We've gotten, it's like staying out of the water because there's sharks, and now the sharks aren't there, but you're still a little afraid to go in. Bad analogy, but it's the best I could come up with.
It has been extremely challenging, and to get your thought process wrapped around how to accommodate everybody. The baristas, making them feel safe enough to interact with the customers now coming in, which I know I've got a great group and they've not had a big problem with that, but I do have a barista that is ready to have a baby here soon. So that's been very challenging. And we've adapted and we've, to that, but getting my head wrapped around how are we going to set this shop back up? I can't set it up the way it used to be because that isn't going to work for everybody, and to still make sure that my customers feel safe enough to still come in even now where there'll be more people inside. So it is very challenging, but we'll make it work. So we'll see how it goes.
Dan, I do have to say that it is not your imagination. I think Hamilton as a little microcosm, it is so unusual and so different than any other place that I've experienced. You guys are like one giant family. The way you all know each other and care about each other and respect each other. And I think that is what's made it successful there, where people have remained open and people are going to go to those places because A, they want them to be there tomorrow, and B, they trust them, and C, they know them. And that is why I think Hamilton is unusual compared to a larger city. And Kevin, I don't know if you have any insights at all that you have from other offices.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty status quo what you kind of shared, Jane. And yeah, it is. I think overwhelmingly offices have been open. It just has looked differently, and some people are eager to jump back in. Like the first week we opened up, we had a customer come into our space, and it's important for us for customers to come in just because we sell experience, but we also sell furniture. So it's sometimes important for people to be able to see and touch and feel that stuff. And so the first week we were open, we had people in and we were making sure that we maintained good physical distancing. Everyone was wearing masks and everyone was respecting each other. But it was really nice to have a little bit of a semblance of normal work again, right? To have that interaction. So I think as I kind of discussed before, it's just kind of important that we know that there's a wide spectrum of where people are going to be. And so it's important that we just know that and respect that. So I want to say thanks so much for having us. We appreciate the opportunity to be able to speak with folks, and the folks on the Zoom call. It's been nice to see your faces all morning, and the folks that on Facebook Live. Hopefully, we were able to help in some way, shape, or form this morning. So thank you very much.
And anybody who has wants any further backup, questions or resources, feel free to get in touch with us. We'd be happy to help you or answer any questions you might have.
I want to just thank you. I think that, certainly I thought this was going to be a great topic, and certainly no disappointments. I think it was great information, fabulous discussion. And I just want to thank you guys for obviously being extremely prepared for this presentation. And like I said, as you were talking, I was running around the office, moving things around. So figuring out how we're going to do this when people are coming back in full time. But I just want to, I appreciate your time. And like I said, it was really, I thought it was excellent, excellent information.
Thank you.
It's really good. Thank you.